This revision builder walks you through a full language paper 1. First, let's have a look at how the paper is structured. You have one source. It's fiction, and it's often at the beginning of a sequence of events. Something is happening, and there's often a change in the middle. You're asked to look for facts. Then you're asked about language in a short section of the text. Then you're asked to zoom out and look at the structure of the whole text. And finally, you're asked to evaluate the overall impact of the language. And then, of course, at the end, there's the writing to describe question. Here's a reminder of the questions before we start. Paper 1 question 2 looks at language. Paper 1 question 3 looks at structure. Paper 1 question 4 gives you a statement to which you should respond looking at how the writer has used language. We're going to work through each of these. It's worth pausing the video here and having a good read so that your brain is in gear before we move into the next section. Now, at this point you want to read the source extremely carefully. Here we go. In this extract, the narrator is walking back to London, alone, late at night. He has arrived at a deserted crossroads. It's from The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. In one moment, every drop of my blood in my body was brought to a stop by the touch of a hand laid lightly and suddenly on my shoulder from behind me. I turned on the instant, with my fingers tightening round the handle of my stick. There, in the middle of the broad, bright high road, there, as if it had that moment sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven, stood the figure of a solitary woman, dressed from head to foot in white garments, her face bent in grave inquiry on mine, her hand pointing to the dark cloud over London as I faced her. I was far too seriously startled by the suddenness with which this extraordinary apparition stood before me in the dead of night and in that lonely place to ask what she wanted. The strange woman spoke first. "Is that the road to London?" she said. I looked attentively at her as she put that singular question to me. It was then nearly 1 o'clock. All I could discern distinctly by the moonlight was a colourless, youthful face, meagre, thin, and sharp to look at about the cheeks and chin, large, grave, wistfully attentive eyes, nervous, uncertain lips, and light hair of a pale brownish-yellow hue. There was nothing wild, nothing immodest in her manner. It was quiet and self-controlled, a little melancholy and a little immodest. Not exactly the manner of a lady, and at the same time not the manner of a woman in the humblest rank of life. The voice, little as I had yet heard of it, had something curiously still and mechanical in its tones, and the utterance was remarkably rapid. She held the small bag in her hands, and her dress, bonnet, shawl, and gown, all of white, was, so far as I could guess, certainly not composed of very delicate or very expensive materials. Her figure was slight, and rather above the average height, her gait, the way she walked, and her actions free from the slightest approach to extravagance. This was all I could observe of her in the dim light and under the perplexingly strange circumstances of our meeting. What sort of woman she was, and how she came to be out alone in the high road an hour after midnight, I altogether failed to guess. The one thing of which I felt certain was that the grossest of mankind could not have misconstrued her motive in speaking, even at that suspiciously late hour, and in that suspiciously lonely place. "Did you hear me?" she said, still quietly and rapidly and without the least fretfulness or impatience. "I asked if that was the way to London." "Yes," I replied, "that is the way. It leads to St. John's Wood and the Regent's Park. You must excuse my not answering you before. I was rather startled by your sudden appearance in the road, and I am, even now, quite unable to account for it." "You don't suspect me of doing anything wrong, do you?" "I have done nothing wrong. I have met with an accident. I am very unfortunate in being here alone so late. Why do you suspect me of doing wrong?" She spoke with unnecessary earnestness and agitation, and shrank back from me several paces. I did my best to reassure her. Let's look now at question 2. How does the writer use language in the first 5 lines to describe the narrator's reaction? First, we should pick out some pieces that seem to describe the narrator's reaction. You should do this on the source or on the exam paper because it's printed on both. Here we are. And here's what I would choose. Take a moment to have a quick look. and then I'll talk you through my reasoning. So, once I've highlighted everything, I want to organise my ideas. I'm broadly going to suggest that we've got the following groups here: fear, time and speed, oddness and the supernatural, and the sense of threat at the very start. So let's have a look at how we'd organise that. I'd drop those quotes under fear, every drop of blood in my body and tightening around the handle of my stick. I've chosen one moment and on the instant for time and speed. For oddness and supernatural, sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven and head to foot in white garments. And then for the sense of threat, the dark cloud over London as I faced her. Let's look now at how you might write that up. Remember, you're trying to make as many language points as possible. How are the techniques being used to achieve the purpose? So I'm going to start off with: the writer presents the narrator's reaction as startled, panicked, fearful, surprised. There are a number of ways you could go with that. Then my first quotation and some analysis, and I'm going to try and make 3 language points. I might put a mini quotation in to support that, and some quick analysis of that. Then quotation 2 and analysis, again 3 language points. Quotation 3 and analysis, and again I'm aiming to be as rich as possible with language points where I can. And if I've got time, another mini quotation, because I'm aiming to get full marks as quickly as possible. Let's look now at question 3. How does the writer structure the text to interest the reader? At this point, I would think about this screen. I wouldn't try to find all of these things, but I would look at the start, the tempo and the time, repetition, understanding the order, contrasts or juxtapositions, thoughts and developments of the character, unexpected changes, revealed ideas, and the ending. And I would look at them across the whole text fairly simply. Beginning, this happens; middle, this happens; end, this happens. Let's see how that looks for this text. It starts with the appearance of the woman, sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven. Then we zoom in on her. Nervous, uncertain lips, nothing wild, nothing immodest. Then she speaks to us. You don't suspect me of doing anything wrong, do you? I have done nothing wrong. And so those are the 3 sections, really, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And my answers will kind of blend what's going on with how is the writer making me think at this point. More specifically, if we look at that here, sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven. And I might look at the way it's a strange and unusual opening, slightly supernatural. I might look at the idea that leaves me with questions. There's a lot of speed to it. There are lots of time phrases very quickly. And then the repetition of the white garments, the unearthly appearance, is meant to make me think something strange is going on. But then it becomes more ordinary. The threat is reduced. Now we wonder who she is. With nervous, uncertain lips, nothing wild, nothing immodest. We've got this inversion and change. She seems threatened by him. She carries something. Luggage of some sort. She's frightened. She's looking for London. Is this an escape? We see a faster rhythm. Panic. We don't get a conclusion. We're as mystified as the character. And all of that occurs in that last quotation. Now, I would pause the screen here and I would have a look at that and think about how you would begin to write that up. When you're done, on we go. Paper 1, question 4. Big marks for this one. We've got 20 marks ahead of us. Here we go. A student said the girl seems frightened and intimidated at first, but the writer seems to hint at something more mysterious. To what extent do you agree? Again, here it's as many linked language points as possible. You're given the purpose, making her seem nervous, hesitant, mysterious. How are the techniques being used to achieve that? And very quickly, a similar structure will be built up to question 2. And you can see here in the 2 orange boxes, at first, presented like this, altered by this, this, and this. And you build your answer because there'll be a change in the middle. If we were to look at specifics, here's a reasonable start to an answer. At first, the writer presents the girl as strange, rather than fearful. In the lines, sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven, stood the figure of a solitary woman dressed from head to foot in white garments. The conventions of a ghost story are used to make her seem almost menacing, and the narrator is the one who feels every drop of blood stop. The exaggerated response implies she seems threatening, and the head to foot in white seems odd because it's so impractical. Why would you be out at night wearing only white? The writer seems to suggest she's behaving abnormally, out of context, and the reference to sprung from the earth creates a sense of the supernatural and the otherworldly. However, the writer also uses the structure to destabilize our response as a reader. The text quickly inverts, it flips the presentation, with adjectives suggesting vulnerability in the nervous, uncertain lips of the character, so that both we and the narrator are not sure how to respond to the character. What I would suggest you do if you're using this for revision for the final exam is to pause this here and write the rest of this response using the source. When you're done, we'll have a look at question 5. A typical question 5 builds on questions 1, 2, 3 and 4 and the text. So here, describe that picture or write the opening of a story in which something mysterious appears. And I'm just going to whiz you through the planning process, but not talk in depth about my answer. For planning, first of all, look at the picture carefully. We imagine a grid over it in order to get something from every corner and to kind of round that scene out. Also plan the way your sentences are going to vary. Some of my favourite sentence openers are on the left there for you to have a look at. Pick your metaphor. Life is a journey, a cage, a maze or purgatory are our 4 most popular. But any metaphor will do as long as you can thread it through your answer. And finally, look at a structure. Start off with a metaphor and sensory language, then react to that. Take me in a flashback, a positive life that you've lost now. Movement, action as you come back to the present. Again, another single line paragraph, and then end with a circular structure. Repeat some of your first paragraph, twisting those ideas and shaping them into something new. There's more detail on this with some examples elsewhere on the YouTube channel. Best of luck with your Paper 1 prep.